Welcome to you both. And just by word of explanation, we had a third panelist, but they're unable to turn up due to a bereavement, and our heart goes out to them. So, Emma and Anne are going to battle on, soldier on bravely. And we could do with an entire panel of people here because this is John 17, which is very dense. John at his most convoluted. So, Anne, I think you come armed with background.
I come with a bit, yeah. I think sometimes it feels as if we spend a lot of time in this final discourse of Jesus in John's Gospel. And if we feel that way, it's because it's true, because there's a lot in it, and we do keep coming back to it again and again in the lectionary. In John's Gospel, chapters 2 to 12 cover 3 years, roughly. Chapters 13 to 17, so 5 chapters, cover one night. And this isn't even the whole of that night. We've still got Gethsemane coming. So there's a lot going on, and it's clearly important. Over these chapters, we move through from the foot washing in chapter 13 to Jesus teaching and talking with and encouraging the disciples, which is 14 to 16. And then where we are today, where Jesus wraps it all up, I guess, by praying for them and praying for us. Now, Jesus's life is clearly of immeasurable importance, but the emphasis that John and actually all the gospel writers put on these last days is a clear sign that this is what it's all been leading to. And in a way, not just those 30 years of Jesus's life or those 3 years of ministry, not just those years leading to this point, a lot more. You know, in verse 24, Jesus reminds us that the Father loved him before the foundation of the world. So taking us back to those timeless, wonderful words in John chapter 1, this is really big. This is big beyond our comprehension. And then here in these chapters, from the memory and the meditation of this disciple, we're invited into the teaching and the prayer that Jesus offers when he knows that this climax of history is about to happen. Despite the complexity of these chapters, it's clear that Jesus has a few things he just wants to drive home, and he comes back to them again and again, reinforcing them. Abide in God. Things might get tough, but abide in God. Be one with each other and love. And finally, remember that in all this, we're never alone. Jesus will be with us. The Spirit will be with us. And that seems to be the key of what he wants us to carry on with.
Thank you, Anne. And once again, John so carefully crafts this telling of the story. And we're also going to find so many of the great themes of John and his portrayal of Jesus in this little passage. The glory is back there again. So, Emma, let's ask you, give Anne a moment to breathe again. And what's a challenge here?
The challenge I don't find in the writing. I think this is a beautiful piece of writing. So often in the Bible, we see Jesus dealing with conflict, dealing with chaos, solving problems, constantly in demand, constantly being required to produce something new and kind of reinvent something or solve a problem for people. He's always very busy. There's a lot going on his kind of to-do list. Here, this is a beautiful, simple passage of Jesus saying what he wants for the world. This is him expressing his ultimate, be where I am, see my glory. They may be one as we are one. It's a beautifully simple wish. The complexity and the challenge comes in how on earth we go about actually kind of putting this into action. And the difficulty the churches face is that from kind of the dawn of when churches were established and going, back as far as you care to mention, there were different churches, there were different ways of worshipping, there were different ways of being. There's never really been a time when you can claim that the churches are as one. We have people who claim to be Anglicans, we have people who claim to be Catholics, and those two, yeah. The challenge is in actually bringing this beautiful simplicity of love and prayer and being. How do we actually do that as humans, when we seem duty bound to erect barriers and create clubs and therefore automatically exclude others as a result of how we are.
And you've had time to catch your breath now.
And to hear what I was going to have as my challenge already stated very beautifully. So I guess expanding on your challenge a little bit, Emma, that yes, it seems that unless we are showing the world that we are one and showing the world, living the reality of love, then the world can't know. It's kind of the corollary, isn't it? In which case, it's pretty amazing we staggered along this far as a church. But we have. So there's clearly other things at work there. But I'll say that the challenge is the complete intertwining in these chapters of abiding in God and abiding in each other. When I was talking at ministry school with our clergy a couple of weeks ago, we were trying to look together at who we are as the church, which is meant to be this loving community who are ambassadors of reconciliation, perhaps, but that has to be driven by our why. And it's the why that enables us to do this, and the why that motivates us and gives us a reason and a security and a foundation. And that why is God's love. That why is the invitation to do this incomprehensible, impossible thing of being made one with God.
Thank you, Anne. I think it's particularly at this point the wonderful support that is poured from across Christian denominations for the new Pope. And we've set aside any little differences we've had and said, look, we stand with this leader of our brothers and sisters. So it can happen, can't it? And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm sure it enriches the hearts of all who can identify with this call of Jesus to be one. So let's move on. That's the challenge, but let's unpack the good news. And Anne, it's your turn.
Thank you. I get to have a first go in case we have the same good news as well. So my good news is another theme through all these chapters, that we will fail, but we're not left alone. So that is that little bit in verse 26 where Jesus says to God, the Father, I made your name known to them, and I will make it known. And that's, to me, a wonderful promise. The promise is Jesus will continue to make it known. That in what we're given isn't an exam that a teacher puts down on the desk in front of us and then walks away from, but more a master working patiently with an apprentice, year after year. Jesus in the Spirit continuing to teach us, continuing to shape us, continuing to make God known to us, because there's always so much more to learn and to become, but we're walking it with Jesus.
Beautiful image of the teacher who stays with us and nurtures and guides. Emma, for you, good news.
It's starting from exactly that point. Somebody who is with us, is there alongside us, who we know through all the stories in the Bible has lived the conflicts and the difficulties and there's so many different ways there are of being human. But at this point where he knows he's coming towards the end of his life, he can make it super simple. He stripped away all those complications and said, all you've actually got to do is love each other, be one before God, and kind of don't overthink it, don't overcomplicate it. We read this in a different way from somebody just saying, this is easy, just go out and sort it. But knowing that he's lived a human existence and that he's seen how hard it can be, that actually towards the end of knowing where his life was, he can strip things away and be so straightforward. We don't have to carry those overcomplications and those overthinkings that we tend to, that he's giving us permission to just set those aside and just be.
Be indeed. Abide, this word that John uses again. It's lovely. It's a very soothing passage in that respect. Don't chomp on the hard stuff. Just be, and I will guide you. We have to make an effort along the way. It's not all.
Yeah, it'd be much easier if love really did come that naturally.
It does have its tangled bits, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and I'll save you this time and say, so what?
It's all about relationships. I remember when we were doing a Lent study and came to the bit about covenant, and we were in our group discussing te tiriti and how that's a covenant and how the covenants in the Bible are all about the relationships, and covenant faithfulness is faithfulness to those within the covenant, or faithfulness of people towards God and God towards God's people. And a beautiful Maori woman within our group said, you notice it's only when covenants break down that we start becoming legalistic. So when the covenant of marriage breaks down, that's when you start getting the lawyers out. And when Te Tiriti starts breaking down, suddenly you start debating intricacies. Whereas that's not what a covenant is about. It's about relationships. And so I guess the so what for me is trying to prioritize relationships over rules, and trying to prioritize our relationship with God and our relationship with each other over perfect liturgy or brilliant sermon or amazing music or even wonderful social justice programs, which are all wonderful things as long as they grow from love. And we are told very plainly by Paul, and it's implied very strongly here, that if it's not growing from love, it's possibly not worth doing. That's a bit of a dangerous statement, because I think in actual fact, many social justice things, many helping other people are worth doing, whether it's with love or not. But somehow, if it's truly to be a thing of the kingdom, love's got to be there.
There's a wonderful, possibly apocryphal saying of one of the archbishops of Canterbury, saying, and he was speaking about speaking in tongues, but saying that if we speak in tongues on a Sunday but do not exercise that love on a Monday, then
yes,
he went back to Paul and the clanging cymbal.
Yeah.
Emma, a final word. So what?
I'm with Anne. It's about the relationships, and with building those on an open and totally welcoming basis. One of the wonderful things for me that came from COVID directly was the opportunity to be part of a wider community of church, not just my church, my local church. Obviously, I've got two local churches anyway, St. Peter's and St. Paul's in Arrowtown and Queenstown. But following on from COVID, Mark and I discovered or rediscovered worship in Clevedon, in one of the parishes of Auckland, one of the places where his father was previously a vicar, and many of the people still remember him. I go online to Clevedon once a month. I feel that we're part of that. When we're up there, we go over. Mark plays the organ for services. He's played for funerals. We feel like we're part of a much wider community. These scattered people of the Good Shepherd, again, it's a community. It's a different community that I feel part of and included in and welcomed by. And I think all these opportunities to make connections on a wider basis, supported by this kind of statement about all of us being in unity, I think it's a marvellous and rich form that's certainly added to my worship opportunities. And as years ago, as children's educator for the Wakatipo, I also went along to services at other churches, denominations. And I found that a fantastic way of making connections, of stepping outside our regular boundaries. And I didn't have this passage particularly in mind when I did that. But gosh, I read this and think, well, I was kind of doing exactly what Jesus told us to do. Don't draw the boundaries. Go and be with other people where they are. And of course, not just on Sundays.
Thank you, Emma. And just as a former educator, just a little advertisement to add to that is the funny symbol of the bishop's chair sitting in the sanctuary of most of our churches, reminding us that we're not a congregational church, that we are networked with our sisters and brothers through the bishop, throughout the diocese, and indeed throughout the Anglican Communion. Thanks for joining me on this one. It's a dense passage, but I think you've given me, anyway, lots to think about it. Emma, Bishop Anne, thanks for being here. Good to have you on board.